Good evening. Tonight's journey won't trace the regal strides of monarchs or the clashing boots of knights. Instead, we'll slip quietly through the corners, following those whose hands kept the castle breathing, though their faces were rarely seen. The scullery maid bent over filthy pots before dawn. The spit boy rotating meat endlessly until his arms throbbed. The laundress, fingers frozen raw. The watchman pacing alone while the world around him dreamed. This is their tale, not one of trumpets and titles, but of relentless toil, weary limbs, and a silent, determined strength. 10 souls, 10 days, all under one ancient roof, yet each living in a realm of their own. If gentle, earthy histories like this help you unwind, consider liking the video or subscribing, but only if it genuinely brings you calm. Leave a comment sharing where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these whispered memories wander. So inhale deeply, let the fire crackle, dim the lights, and let's begin. Not with nobles, but with those who labored in their shadow. Morning, you're awake, not from rest, let's not pretend, but because the stone beneath you has finally stolen the last ember of warmth from your bones, and because the cook has already stepped on you, twice. This is what it means to exist as the lowest ranked creature within the medieval kitchen hierarchy. Welcome to the glamorous world of the scullery maid. You are unpaid, mostly unseen, and perpetually grimy. Noticed only when something breaks, burns, or needs blame. You sleep curled beside the hearth because it's marginally less cold than outside. Your bedding? A burlap sack stuffed with straw, brittle and pungent from decades of grease, damp wood, and crushed hope. Your only garment, a shapeless, uncolored wool shift, serves as nightgown and work uniform. It's been boiled clean, maybe twice this year, probably once, possibly never. You rise long before dawn, before the rooster crows, before even God himself stirs. Why? Because everything that must be done before the Lords open their eyes. Light the fire, draw water, knead bread, scrub kitchens, is yours to manage. Technically, it's not your job alone. But let's be honest, the older girls have mastered the art of invisibility the moment work appears. You haven't figured that trick out yet, or perhaps you simply weren't born slippery. The fire has died overnight. The hearth lies cold and still. That's disastrous. A kitchen without flame is like a knight without sword. Still threatening, but mostly pitiful. So, barefoot, you shuffle into the pitch-black courtyard. Your shoes disintegrated months ago and were creatively transformed into draft stoppers for the pantry. The cobblestones are jagged and slick. You collect kindling with fingers too numb to feel the splinters. Back inside, crouched low, you coax damp twigs and reluctant embers into reluctant life. Your thoughts as smoke-filled and irritated as your lungs. When the fire finally catches, you cradle your hands above it, watching your fingers thaw from ghostly blue to aching red. Water comes next. The castle lacks plumbing, it has you. You shoulder wooden buckets and trudge to the well, again and again. Gallons of icy sloshing weight hang from a wooden yoke across your bony shoulders. Each trip burns your arms, scalds your spine, and buckles your knees like wet barley, and you still haven't reached breakfast. By the time the rest of the staff filters in, yawning, scratching, shuffling, you're already on your fourth trip to the well. No one thanks you. No one meets your eyes. Your mobile furniture. Legs with a bucket. That's all. Then thunder, also known as the cook, erupts through the door, red-faced and sweat-glossed, wielding a wooden spoon like a commander's baton. Her first bark is about the stew pot still being crusted with last night's disaster. That's your cue. Back to scrubbing. You scrape iron pots until your knuckles split. No soap, of course, that's for the well-born and the damned. You scrub with ash, sand, or lye. When available, lye eats through grime. And your skin. Ash grinds like glass. Your right hand is a maze of burns and calluses. Your left is worse. The scullery is not a workplace. It's a punishment cell with kitchen tools. One soot-clogged window lets in neither sun nor hope. The air reeks of overcooked meat and a scent you dare not identify. You hunch over greasy troughs, scrape charred trenches, and chase rats off the prep table with a ladle like some grease-soaked sentinel. Speaking of rats, they rule here. You just rent space. Mid-morning, still no food. You sneak a crust from your apron, dry as chalk, and nibble it behind a door. You fail to look innocent. The kitchen maid spots you, rats you out, and you're rewarded with latrine pot duty for the week. Joy. Later comes onion duty, a glamorous position which requires crying professionally for hours. You chop until tears blind you. No one asks if you're okay. No one thinks to. Tears are expected, if not from onions, then from life. At noon, the nobles dine. You carry in dishes, walking the exact steps you've been drilled. Eye contact is forbidden. Nobles prefer their servants faceless, thoughtless. You hold a jug for over an hour and never get asked to pour. Your arms go numb. That's expected. Afterward, cleanup. Bones flung beneath the table. Trays of half-eaten pies. Greasy scraps of fish. All scraped into the slop bucket. You're forbidden from eating leftovers, but maybe, just this once, you sneak a crust. Just a corner. Just enough to keep standing. Afternoon melts into evening. More water. More peeling. More sweeping. You're blamed for the hound vomiting in the solar. You've never even seen the solar. Doesn't matter. You were there spiritually. As night approaches, dinner prep begins in earnest. The room swells with noise and heat. The fire roars. Someone drops a pot. The cook screams. Smoke thickens. You slap out a spark with your apron and keep moving. You're allowed a bite, 5 girls sharing one bowl of stew. Mostly liquid, a root, a barley grain, and something mysterious that might once have been squirrel. You don't question. It's food. Dinner service begins. Again, you hover like background scenery, soaked and silent. Your voice today has only said 3 things. Yes, cook. Sorry, cook. It won't happen again, cook. Whether or not it happened. Finally, dishes. Pans crusted like they've been cemented. You scrub through exhaustion until your hands tremble. Not from cold, from depletion. You're dismissed with a grunt. You crawl back to your straw sack near the hearth. The fire has shrunk to sleepy embers. Your shift is damp. You smell of onions, smoke, and bone tiredness. Someone's already snoring. Another girl's crying. You don't ask. You don't want to know. You stare at the ceiling, too tired for dreams. You didn't choose this life, no one does. You inherited it. Your mother worked the dairy until her back collapsed. Your aunt the laundry until the fever claimed her. Now it's your turn. Welcome to the family tradition. You used to have a name. It's hard to recall how it sounded in someone else's mouth. Now you're just girl, or sometimes you there. When someone bothers to notice, you are not special. You are not heroic. You are simply another piece of the invisible machinery grinding behind castle walls. But the castle runs because of you. Because you rise before the sunrise. Because you know how to hush a whining hinge with a dab of goose grease. Because you remember which bucket is safe for water and which is still steeped in mop filth. Because you scour pans until they shine like silver you'll never hold. No one will ever carve a statue for you. There will be no ballads, no grand stories. Yet if you vanish tomorrow, the kitchen would unravel within the week. You don't sleep soundly. Your limbs twitch. Your muscles ache with memory. Your dreams are hazy, shifting between meadows you've never walked, boats you've never sailed, and pure, silent voids. You wake with a dry tongue and heavy limbs, and then you begin again, same as yesterday, and no one notices, except maybe Lord Crumbs. You are the spit boy now. Whether that earns you congratulations or pity depends on how much you enjoy being slowly roasted in front of a fire while rethinking your life's path. You're probably somewhere between 8 and 12 years old, small enough to curl under the hearth, just old enough to hold back tears when you inevitably burn yourself. Maybe you're an orphan. Maybe you were sold. Maybe your parents convinced themselves this was a fine opportunity. Doesn't really matter now. Your duty is simple in theory. Sit by the giant hearth and rotate the roasting spit. Clockwise, gently, constantly, unless told otherwise, which happens. Sometimes you're told to stop. Sometimes you're turning too fast. Sometimes too slow. Once you were accused of impertinence for blinking too much. It's hot, not the kind of warmth that comforts, but a consuming, suffocating heat, like living inside an oven halfway through its bake. Your cheeks stay flushed. Your hair never dries. Your tunic is always damp with sweat and streaked with meat grease and smoke. Once upon a time, you liked the smell of roasting duck. Now it just means another headache. The burns on your hands are nearly constant. The kitchen offers no sympathy. If you blister your fingers, wrap them. If your brows burn off, grow new ones. If you faint, try not to land near the stew. Breaks? No. Breaks are for idle meat. The fire doesn't rest, nor do the expectations of the nobleman's appetite. Their goose must turn at precisely the right pace, or heads will metaphorically roll. Sometimes literally, depending on how deeply the steward's drunk. Feast days are the worst. Longer spits, whole pigs, once even a full deer. You had a partner that day. He had a lazy eye and a cruel sense of humor. Sometimes he'd let go of the crank without warning, just to see you panic. You haven't seen him since. Someone said he was reassigned to the kennels. You hope the dogs are fairer than he was. You sit for hours barely shifting. Your knees numb, your back cramping. One time, your foot went so completely numb you thought you'd lost it. The steward called you dramatic and tossed a turnip at your head. The kitchen itself is chaos. Shouting, clattering, rushing bodies, arms full of oysters, trays of stewing pots, spilled wine. And you're the still point, the one calm eye in the storm. No one thanks you. No one even remembers you exist, unless the roast comes out lopsided. Then suddenly, you're everyone's favorite scapegoat. When the meat is finally deemed done, you help pull it from the spit. Sizzling fat drips dangerously. You flinch and someone scolds you. You hesitate and someone smacks you. Then it's on to the next roast or stew or boiling cauldron that smells like rotting onions and despair. You lose track of time. Firelight is your only clock. Hunger your only measurement. Sometimes someone tosses you a bone. Not metaphorically. A literal bone, half-gnawed, barely enough meat to bother with. You crouch in the corner like a starving animal and nibble what you can, then go back to turning. By late afternoon, your cheeks are flushed raw. Your lips are cracked. Your hands are black with soot and trembling from the heat. You've breathed so much smoke you cough like a man 4 times your age. You are still turning. Upstairs, you hear laughter, clinking plates. The nobles are dining. Their room is full of light, soft cushions, and sweet breads. You'll never step foot there. You exist so they don't have to. The feast ends, but not your shift. Now comes the cleanup, hauling half-eaten carcasses back down, scraping bones, rinsing goblets, dragging the greasy spit into the scullery. It's heavy. Your shoulder is already sore. You feel the blister on your palm burst. You pretend it didn't. A shout echoes. Lord wants a roast for his hounds. You sigh and begin again. The dogs will eat better than you. Again. It's late now. Your tunic is soaked with sweat. Your hair is stiff with grime. Your hands shake. Not just from tiredness, but hunger. Eventually, someone hands you a bowl of pottage. Watery. A few soft turnips, maybe a barley grain if you're lucky. You drink it in silence. There's nothing left to say. Everyone's too spent to pretend to be human. You clean the tools. Dull knives. The spit. The hooks. Everything must be spotless before the steward makes his rounds. If he finds a smear, you'll scrub it with your tongue. If you're lucky. If not, you'll be assigned to scrubbing the floor in the Lord's privy. Night thickens. The kitchen quiets. The last pot clinks into place. The cook stops yelling. You sit near the embers, too sore to lie down, too wired to sleep. A rat scurries past. You don't move. You're too tired to care. You think of your life before this. Maybe you were a shepherd's boy. Maybe your parents ran a mill. Maybe they still do. Maybe they forgot you. Or maybe they were just desperate. One fewer mouth to feed. There's no way out. Spit boys don't graduate to knights. You won't become a steward. You'll never hold a sword. Your only hope is surviving long enough to become an assistant cook. Maybe by age 20, if your back doesn't fail first. Winter is especially brutal. The hearth might promise warmth, but it lies. It roasts your front while freezing your spine. You turn the spit like a rotisserie ghost, crispy on one side, frostbitten on the other. Your shoes are long gone. You wrap your feet in rags, pray for no puddles. Your joints crack when you walk. You crouch, and it feels like you may never uncrouch again. Your fingers are so numb from burns and cold you can't feel the crank anymore. You just hope you're still turning it. Health? That's not something you have. Your cough has its own rhythm now. Your skin flakes from heat rash, then cracks from the chill. You permanently reek of scorched fat. People avoid you. Your arms are mottled with so many burns they resemble overcooked pork. No one offers a remedy. Apothecaries are for nobles. You're told to rub pig lard on the wounds and keep going. You are bottom of the kitchen hierarchy, lower than the butcher's apprentice, lower than the egg-fetching boy. Even the kitchen dog holds a higher position. At least it gets scraps. Sometimes the steward gives you a nod. That's the highlight of your week. You wonder sometimes, what would it be like to leave, to walk away? But spit boys don't leave. They either become different kinds of servants or they vanish. You settle into your little space by the fire again. Legs drawn to your chest, skin aching. The fire's low now. Your arms burn where blisters have cracked. You stare into the coals, trying to imagine what real warmth feels like. Not heat that burns, not smoke that chokes, but warmth that comforts. You've never felt that. Outside, snow is falling. Inside, meat still sizzles. And you, caught between them, forgotten, turning, always turning. You know every castle, every town, every cluster of cottages must face one unavoidable truth. Waste happens. Someone has to deal with it. That someone is you. Officially, you're a gong farmer. It's a title that sounds almost respectable, but it's just a fancy term for human filth remover. If something ends up in a chamber pot, you haul it out. If it's rotting in a cesspit, you're the one climbing down to get it. You are not merely at the bottom of the social ladder, you're the mud it rests on. You scrape society's underbelly clean, quite literally. And somehow, this disgusting job pays more than others. That should tell you everything. Of course, don't get too excited. The pay is decent not because of skill, but because no one else wants it. Nobody wants to live as a creature of stench and shadows. You work at night not for atmosphere, but because even seeing you in daylight offends people. You're barred from public gatherings unless you've bathed. And bathing doesn't do much. The smell doesn't rinse off. It has moved in. It lives in your pores now. Your tools, a rake, a shovel, a battered bucket. Your uniform, layers of rough wool, stuffed with moss or straw. Anything to mask the reek. It doesn't work. The smell always wins. Clings to you like a cruel joke. People cross the road when they see you. They pretend you're not there. You wish you could do the same. Your job begins where others ends. At the pits, the cesspits, massive holes into which generations of nobles, servants, and animals have dumped their leavings. These are not tidy, shallow holes. These are deep, compacted reservoirs of horror, half solid, half liquid, entirely monstrous. And yes, you go down into them. There's sometimes a rope, occasionally a ladder. Mostly you lower yourself using whatever grip and nerve you've got left. The scent hits you first. It's a wall. A stinging, acidic, eye-watering wall of fermentation and sorrow. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. Now you can taste it. You descend carefully. Your boots squelch with every step. The pit is ankle-deep in places, knee-deep in others, and deeper still where it's best not to guess. You rake through it all. Fresh waste is unpleasant, but it's the older stuff, the hardened sludge, the black crusts, the bubbling layers that shift like they might wake up, that haunt you. You don't look too closely. You don't ask what that squirming mass was. You just dig. You rake and lift, fill your bucket and haul it back up. What do you dig through? Human waste mostly, but also animal dung, shattered chamber pots, soiled straw, bits of half-eaten food, rags used for purposes you don't care to imagine. Once you found a chicken, still intact. You have no idea how it got there. You buried it out of respect. Sometimes you find coins. Nobles drop them in their haste. You pocket them. No one begrudges you that. You've earned every single tarnished penny. When the bucket is full, you dump it into your cart. It's a wooden contraption on wheels, warped and cracked, and somehow more resentful than you are. You repeat this process over and over, dozens of times. More if there's been a feast. Feasts are your nightmare, so much food in, so much more out. And you always work under torchlight. Not because you prefer it, but because no one wants to witness your work in daylight. You are the dark mirror of their comfort. You work in silence. There's nothing to say. You do not speak in cesspits. Words turn to ash here. When your cart is full of what the records politely call night soil, you trundle it through the quiet streets. The wheels squeak. The contents slosh. The air around you wilts. People avoid your gaze. Someone crosses themselves. A child gags and hides behind their mother. Once, a teenager hurled a cabbage at you. You threw something back. You're not proud of it, but you don't regret it. You exit the gates, heading beyond the walls to the dumping fields. That's where all this waste ends up. Not buried, not discarded, reused. Because this is medieval efficiency, waste becomes fertilizer. The same nobles who pretend not to see you will soon feast on vegetables grown from their own refuse. You try not to laugh. Sometimes you do. At dawn, your cart is empty, but your job's not done. You clean your tools, not because anyone cares, but because leaving filth to harden makes tomorrow worse. You wash them in a pond already half ruined by the runoff. You scrub your shovel, rinse your boots, douse your hands. It doesn't help. The stink remains. It has become a second skin. Your neighbors can always tell what shift you've had. Some won't sit near you. Others refuse to share a table. You stopped being surprised a long time ago. You tell yourself it's honest work, necessary work, and it is. Without you, the castle would be awash in filth in less than a week. You're not a hero. You're a barrier, a boundary between order and sewage. You eat alone. Bread that tastes of ashes, not because it's burnt, but because your entire world smells like ash and worse. You drink ale because water isn't safe, and because it's easier to live with this job slightly dulled. Winter is a special torment. Everything freezes. The pit, the cart, your hands, your breath. Ice forms over the cesspit, and you must break through to reach the foul warmth beneath. It's the only time in life warmth is unwelcome. Summer doesn't spare you either. The heat amplifies the stench. Waste becomes airborne. Flies arrive by the hundreds. Wasps too, for reasons unknown. You sweat constantly. The sweat soaks your socks and squelches in your boots. You've tried masking the smell. Vinegar, crushed mint, rubbing herbs under your arms. Nothing works. The stink adapts, fights back. You once made yourself smell like floral rot. People joked anyway. Smells like a gong farmer, they'd say, as if it were clever, as if it were new. They assume you're stupid. You're not. You've learned more than most scholars ever will. You know how to balance a ladder while hauling 40 pounds of slop. You know how to avoid collapsing tunnel walls. You know which torch oils don't ignite methane. That's chemistry or close enough. And here's the truth, the dirty little secret. You make more than most servants. The stable boys, the baker's assistant, even some scribes. Not luxuriously more, but enough, because no one else wants your job. They'd rather starve. That's your curse and your advantage. By the time you return home, your body is a knot. Your cart is empty. Your hands shake. You lean your shovel against the wall and sit on a log. Not because it's clean, but because it's there. You often sleep outside. The smell is too much even for your family. If you have a wife, she insists. If you have children, they hold their noses and say you smell like boiled cabbage and sin. They're not wrong. You close your eyes, but the scent lingers. It follows you into your dreams. Your hands, cracked, black-nailed, lined with grime, don't look like yours anymore. You've stopped trying to clean them. The soap costs more than your pride. You used to smell flowers, grass, wood smoke. Now nothing cuts through the rot. Your nose has been reshaped, rewired. Sometimes the guards joke with you. Don't fall in, they shout, like it's the first time anyone said it. You smile politely, pretend it's funny. Once, one of them gave you a shove near the pit's edge. You didn't smile that time. You dream occasionally, not often, maybe of becoming a baker or a scribe, but you wake up and your hands still smell like despair. So you rinse your face, adjust your stinking tunic, and walk back toward the pit. Because even in your dreams, someone has to carry the bucket. As dawn breaks and the roosters crow, you haul your last load. You scrape the last clump from your boot. You breathe in the morning, knowing the nobles will soon rise, stretch, and relieve themselves into golden basins, never wondering where it all goes. And you'll vanish again, like the smell you carry, faded but still there. That's your role, the cleaner of kingdoms, forgotten by most, remembered only by the flies. You wear shoes. That detail alone puts you a notch above most of the castle's laborers. They're made of stiff leather, curling at the toes like a court jester's joke, and they squeak with every step. A problem, considering silence is meant to be part of your job. You are the apprentice to the chamberlain. That means you carry ledgers, memorize inventory lists, and pretend you understand what words like protocol and accountability actually mean. You are not noble. Don't get ideas. You're a servant, but a servant with access. You enter rooms others only scrub. You see things most peasants wouldn't believe. You fetch parchment, copy numbers, and remain perfectly calm while the countess screams that her linens smell of goat. Your day starts before the nobles stir. You wake in the servants' hall, next to the good fire, the one not used to boil rats or warm up piss pots. You splash your face with cold water, comb your hair with your fingers, and wipe dust from your tunic using your own sleeve. Presentation matters. First task, candles. You walk the hallways replacing nubs of melted wax with fresh, stubby tapers. Beeswax is for the chapel and the banquet hall. Everyone else gets the cheap stuff that smells faintly of barnyard. You move from room to room, eyes sharp. That's your second duty. Notice everything. If the salt cellar's running low, you jot it down. If the wine stock is short by 2 cups, you investigate. If the chamber pot in the guest suite is full, you don't clean it, you find someone who will. Delegation is sacred tradition here. Always down, never up. The chamberlain never sleeps. He's already up, pacing with the precision of a compass. He's a lean man with a beak-like nose and expectations sharper than his quill. He smells faintly of lavender and ink. His robes are always clean. He always knows when you've made a mistake, sometimes before you've made it. He speaks in lists. 2 bolts of wool, 4 casks of lamp oil, 1 visiting friar with dietary restrictions that border on theological crisis. You nod, write quickly, and pray you don't spill ink again. Last time, he made you rewrite an entire month's records by candlelight, with the steward chewing pickled herring in your ear. Your job is part clerk, part errand runner, part designated scapegoat. If linens vanish, your fault. If firewood is wet, also your fault. If a noble's dog relieves itself in the corridor, somehow still your fault. Mid-morning is for inspections. You trail the chamberlain like a ghost with a quill. He raps on walls, lifts sheets, sniffs rushes, and samples ale with the gravitas of a royal judge. You nod, scribble, and try not to sigh. One last week got you a full day sorting lentils by color. You don't envy anyone in this castle, except the cook's dog. It gets to bark without consequence. Lunch is not a pause. It's a battlefield. Who eats where? What's being served? Who must be seated 3 places from whom so they don't reignite that feud from the Lent wine incident 3 years ago? You carry seating charts, adjust name cards, and whisper titles in ears before they're butchered aloud. After the meal, you meet the chamberlain in the solar. He reviews accounts. You sit across from him, reading out item after item until your throat itches. Wax, barley, ink, horseshoes, mead, flour, soap, again and again. Occasionally, he asks about the weight of a cusk or how many loaves come from a stone of flour. If you hesitate, he raises one eyebrow. You'd rather be slapped. Then the visitors arrive. Nobles from afar, wandering knights, cousins of someone important who always seem to be between estates. They bring trunks, attitudes, and difficult diets. You escort them to their rooms, carefully noting which linens they receive. Not for thanks, but because you'll be blamed if even a hand towel vanishes. You also manage the castle keys, or at least retrieve them. Armory, cellar, the locked wardrobe upstairs that opens nothing but is still mysteriously essential. The keys hang in a pouch at your belt. You touch them constantly, like prayer beads. If you lose one, it's not just a reprimand, it's potentially exile. Or worse, permanent chamber pot duty. By late afternoon, the lists become logistics. A salted herring delivery is delayed. A velvet shipment is short. A priest passed out in the chapel. The vinegars run dry. The steward has complaints. You nod, listen, and draft polite letters in the chamberlain's tidy script. Sometimes you write love letters, too. Truly, there's a noblewoman who insists on communicating exclusively by parchment. She dictates from behind a curtain while feeding her lapdog strawberries soaked in cream. You revise her nonsense into something vaguely romantic and deliver it to a knight who blushes harder than the berries. Evening means candles again. You make your rounds, relighting what's gone dim, snuffing what's too low. The halls grow quieter. The nobles drink. The servants exhale. And you remain in between, neither seen nor hidden. Necessary, but not acknowledged. You check the guest rooms one last time. Straighten rushes. Adjust drapes. Ensure no one's eloped, expired, or spilled anything expensive. You smooth wrinkles from the bedding like they might cause war. By now, your feet scream. Your head pulses. Your fingers are sticky with wax and stained with ink. You haven't eaten since dawn, but you won't eat until the chamberlain finishes supper and releases you. Sometimes he forgets. You wait outside his chamber, dozing upright as he tells war stories to a page boy who wishes he were a knight. You rest your chin in your palm and dream about barley rations. Eventually, the door opens. He flicks his fingers. You nod, whisper a thank you, and trudge back to the servants' quarters. Your bunk is narrow. The fire's dead. Someone stole your blanket. Again, you lie down in half your clothes and stare upward. The ceiling leaks. You wonder if this is what power smells like. Tallow, sweat, parchment, and old lavender. You used to think working near nobles would be thrilling, that you'd hear secrets, see how power functions. And you do hear the secrets, mostly about rashes, missing pastries, or who thinks whom is a bore. As for power, it's just more rules, more traps, more expectations. The chamberlain calls it discipline. You call it exhaustion. You've learned how to be essential and invisible at once, how to be fluent in silence. There's talk of promotion. Maybe one day you'll become steward's assistant or manage the ledger room. More likely, your back will give out, or your eyesight will go from all this candlelit reading. There's no pension, only slower steps. Still, you show up, because your lists are what keep the kitchen stocked. Your notes are what keep the nobles from dueling over soup bowls. Because if you disappear, Someone important will miss their imported lamp oil, and the whole place will unravel. You drift to sleep counting barrels. You dream in inventory, wax, salt, barley. You wake when the first bell tolls. Still dark. You rise, stretch aching joints, and adjust your squeaky shoes. Time to relight the candles and start over. The other servants tolerate you. Barely. You're not quite one of them anymore. You wear cleaner clothes. Use words like allocation and inventory. But you're not noble either. They forget your name before you even finish bowing. You walk in a strange limbo, an emblem of how power trickles down slowly and blame floods upward. And still you walk. You carry the lists, count the candles, and prepare to be blamed for whatever goes wrong next. Your day begins in a barn that never fully sleeps. The horses stir before the sky lightens, snorting fog into the air, their hooves clinking softly over straw that's half bedding, half compost. You are the stable boy. That means you shovel, scrub, fetch, lift, and get kicked a lot. But mostly, it means you apologize to animals that are cleaner, better fed, and better mannered than most people you'll ever meet. You sleep above them in the hayloft, if you can call it sleep. The floorboards beneath you creak with every shift. You hear everything. The flick of a tail, the scrape of hooves, and the unmistakable sound of something large relieving itself uncomfortably close to your pillow. Before the sun even dares to show itself, your hands are already chapped. You pull on the same boots, stiff with yesterday's sweat, and shrug into a tunic that smells like horse and mildew. You climb down the ladder into the cold, and the cold greets you like a slap. You start with mucking the stalls, one by one. Shovel, toss, repeat. It isn't glamorous. It isn't even tolerable. But it must be done before the master of horse arrives. If not, you'll get a backhand and a lecture about respect and filth delivered in that order. You move fast, but not too fast. Horses don't like speed. They spook easily, and a spooked horse is more dangerous than a drunk knight. They bite, they rear, they crush ribs. You've already broken 2 fingers and once got kicked in the side so hard you coughed blood for a week. You didn't go to the apothecary. You couldn't afford it. You kept working. Still, you love them. Not the job. The animals. They're honest in ways people rarely are. They don't pretend. They don't flatter. They don't scheme. If they don't like you, they show it. If they do, they lean into your hand and breathe warm against your chest. That's enough. The smell of the stable is thick, dung, hay, sweat, horse. Somehow, it's both better and worse than anything inside the castle. You've grown used to it. You've learned to tell the scent of a healthy gelding from one with colic. You know the difference between nervous breathing and boredom. The horses make more sense than people. After the stalls are clean, it's feeding time. Heavy sacks of oats and bales of hay. You lower them carefully from the loft, bracing your back so you don't pull it again. You did last winter and got accused of faking it. The master of horse threw a bridle at your head. Feeding is a dance. Some horses snatch. Some shy. Some nip if you get too close. You've got the scars. Still, you stroke their necks, whisper nonsense, and keep calm. They know your voice. They trust it. Mid-morning is for grooming. You curry, brush, untangle, wipe, and pick. Burrs out of tails, stones from hooves, dirt from coats. If the Lord rides, you polish the tack until it gleams. Not because he'll notice, he won't, but because the master will, and your hide is easier to tan than saddle leather. Sometimes nobles bring their dogs into the stables. Hunting dogs, twitchy beasts bred for noise and chaos. You clean up after them too. No one ever says thank you. When the Lord decides to ride, always last minute, everything changes. The barn becomes a battlefield. You saddle his favorite gelding, the one that doesn't like to be touched. You check every strap 3 times. Wipe the bit. Adjust the stirrups. They'll be too short. They always are. Fashion matters more than safety. Then you step back, still invisible as he mounts. If the horse moves, it's your fault. If he slips, your fault. If he blames the weather, that's still somehow your fault. You'll hear about it all week. Afterward, you fetch water, stack hay, sweep again. Leather and sweat cling to your skin. Your arms ache, your back tightens. You've pulled muscles you didn't know you had. You've bled from places that shouldn't bleed. There are breaks, technically, but they're not restful. You sit on a splintered stool, sip warm ale from a dented tin, and watch dust motes drift through the air like ghosts too tired to haunt. You don't talk. Your jaw hurts from clenching. Your body hurts from being alive. Winter makes it worse. Your fingers go numb even inside gloves. The troughs freeze. You break ice with a hammer just to give the horses a drink. You've thought more than once about whether anyone in the castle even remembers the stable lacks insulation. Summer turns the barn into an oven. You sweat through everything. Tunic, undershirt, sole. Flies arrive in swarms, biting, buzzing, relentless. By evening, the sky darkens and the wind shifts. You know something's coming. Rain, or worse. You can feel it in your joints and see it in the horses. They're twitchy, stamping, restless. You sweep the aisles one more time. Scrub the water troughs with a bristleless brush. No one's bothered to replace it in 2 years. You mend a frayed strap with twine and a bone needle. It's ugly, but it'll hold. The master of horse checks in one final time. He doesn't say much. Just a grunt if pleased. A yell if not. You've learned to measure the day by the volume of his disappointment. Before you climb back to the loft, you sneak a few carrots. One for the gray mare that never bites. One for the chestnut that only bites strangers. They nuzzle your palm. Their noses are velvet. It's the closest thing to kindness you get most days. Your bed is straw, rags. It smells of saddle soap and mildew. You don't undress. No point. You'll be up in 5 hours. The horses below snort and sigh, settling in for the night. You stretch, joints cracking, and fold your arms behind your head. You listen to the wind against the barn, to the horses breathing, to the floorboards creaking like old bones. You think about the nights, the tournaments, the stories of glory. None of them mention the boy who saddled the horse, who calmed it, who stood silently in the shadow so some noble could shine. That's fine. You're not here to be remembered. You're here to keep the horses fed, the stalls clean, and the animals calm. You don't expect more. Some days you eat twice. Tonight you're lucky. You have a hunk of cheese you traded for a favor, and a piece of onion bread so stale it could break teeth. You chew slowly. You've learned to make meals last. Outside, the great hall flickers with torchlight. You hear laughter, a lute. The sound drifts through the cracks in the wood like someone else's dream. You don't mind. The horses stir. One whinnies. Another shifts in its stall. You recognize the rhythm of their movements. It's familiar, comforting. You lie back in the straw. Your hands ache. Your knees throb. Your spine protests every shift. But you're alive, and none of your animals were harmed today. That's what you count as a victory. You think about the future, briefly, but there's no ladder from stable boy to steward. No magical brush that turns into a sword. You'll never be a knight. You won't even be a squire. But you know animals. You know wounds. You know how to wrap legs and soothe fears. That matters. Maybe not to the lords, but to the creatures that trust you. It's everything. You've seen boys who couldn't take it. They ran, or broke, or vanished after one too many slaps. No one asks where they went. You don't plan to be one of them. You keep your head down. Do your job. Endure. When storms come, the roof leaks. When hay goes moldy, no one replaces it. In winter, your breath ices the rafters. But the horses are there, breathing, waiting, trusting. And most days, that's enough. You close your eyes. One last thought drifts in, the image of a hoof print in fresh mud. Perfectly formed, rimmed in frost, still warm from the horse that made it. It won't last, but right now it's real, and so are you. You wake with a paw in your mouth. Again, it belongs to one of the turnspit dogs, short-legged, long-bodied, perpetually exhausted. He's curled beside you on your straw pallet, snoring softly. His fur is thick with kitchen grease and what smells suspiciously like duck fat. You don't complain. He's warm, and honestly, he smells better than most of your coworkers. You are the keeper of the turnspit dogs. Your job? Keeping them alive, moving, and mostly compliant. They are the invisible engine that makes noble dining possible. The meat turns. The dogs run. You make sure neither stops. You wake before the fire's been stirred. You stretch, bones cracking, and immediately step in something wet. Hopefully water. Probably not. The dogs are already pacing. They sense what's coming. You grab the first snipe. He's cranky, stubborn, and on his third consecutive shift. He gives your hand a half-hearted nip. You deserve it. You rub behind his ears, whisper your apology, and lead him to the kitchen. The cook is already shouting. Something about Swan. You ignore it. You have your own problem. You unlatch the turnspit wheel. It resembles a hamster wheel, if hamsters were 30 pounds of sinew and anxiety. Snipe hops in, resigned. You secure the latch behind him. He begins walking. The wheel turns. The spit turns. The roast begins to rotate. The noble's meat is now in motion. Now you wait. You bribe. You pace. You beg. The trick is simple. Keep the dogs moving without breaking them. If one slows, the meat cooks unevenly. The cook screams. If one stops entirely, the whole spit lurches, the meat slips, and you're accused of ruining the Lord's meal, and possibly the entire liturgical calendar. You've got 4 dogs, 2 work, 2 rest, but none of them truly rest. They twitch, whimper, gnaw on bones that look like they've been chewed since the dawn of time. You rub their legs between shifts, whisper encouragement like you're training tiny soldiers for an unwinnable war. You clean the wheels too, not because you're told to, but because a loud squeak mid-banquet once earned you a ladle to the head. Lesson learned. Sometimes the Lord wanders through. He nods vaguely at the roast, compliments the smoky flavor. That's your sweat, and probably some dog hair. You're welcome. The dogs aren't supposed to eat scraps from the noble table, but you feed them anyway. No one runs well on an empty stomach. Dried peas don't fuel endurance. So when the cook's back is turned, you slip them bits of fat or soggy crusts soaked in gravy. They love you for it, until one of them nearly bites off your thumb, which has happened. Your forearms are covered in burns. Your skin looks like leather left too close to the fire. Because that's your life, the fire never goes out. Not really. Even at night, it smolders. You sleep nearby, close enough to be summoned, far enough to be forgotten. You've inhaled so much ash that your snot comes out black. Your cough sounds like a forge bellows on its last breath. Your eyes stay red, not from tears, though those happen too, but from smoke and heat. You used to think dogs were cheerful, loyal companions. These aren't pets. They're tools bred for one thing: endless, mechanical labor. They don't want affection. They want food and rest and not to exist. If you're late feeding them, they revolt. Once you walked into the kennel and found 3 sitting in a silent circle, chewing your only spare shoe. Not playfully, ritualistically. No one taught you how to train them. You learned by bleeding. You keep a stick nearby. You don't like using it, but sometimes they just stop. They look at you with wide eyes, half aware they're caught in a joke with no punchline. You've named them all. Snipe, of course. Button, who's missing 2 teeth and half an ear. Moore's the quiet one who limps when it rains. And Guts, the biter. He only likes you when you feed him bacon grease. Otherwise, he growls like a distant storm and snaps at shadows. You think Guts understands. Not language, not commands, but he sees the world like you do. Loud, thankless, full of heat and movement and nowhere to run. One day, a noble child wandered into the kitchen. She pointed at the dog wheel and said, "Look, spinning puppies." You smiled. Her tutor pulled her away like she'd just witnessed a hanging. You didn't say anything. You never do. You walk differently now. Years of ducking under beams, crouching by fire pits, and lifting hot metal have shaped your spine like a hook. Your hands are calloused and cracked. Your knees hurt when it rains. You're 17. You used to dream of being a falconer. You pictured yourself in the woods, lifting a gloved hand to the sky, commanding birds with a whistle. Now you barely hear birds. All you hear are claws on wood and the wheel's steady churn. When you do get a moment, you sit by the back wall, just out of view. Moors usually finds you. She doesn't ask for food. She just rests beside you, breathing slow. You lean your head against her ribs and close your eyes. Just for a minute. Then the bell rings. More meat. More motion. No one thanks the dogs. No one thanks you. At night, you scrub your arms with sand and vinegar. You try not to cry when the salt stings your open burns. You lie on your pallet. The fire hums. The dogs pant. You think about running. Not away, just running. The nobles call it a charming kitchen detail, turnspit dogs. They think it's quaint, rustic. Some bard once said they enjoy the exercise. You nearly choked from laughing. You've developed a strange patience. You don't complain. You don't correct. You just keep moving. Keep feeding. Keep the wheel from stopping. You've seen worse. One boy lost a hand in the gear system. No one knows what happened after. He was carried away. Maybe he died. Maybe he was reassigned to something even darker. You have a pouch tucked into the rafters. Inside, a bit of cheese, a button shaped like a daisy, and a dog's tooth. Guts lost it during a particularly rough shift. You kept it, not as a trophy, as proof that even the fiercest things can break. Your ears ring from the shouting, from the fire, from the pounding of paws. Your stomach never feels full. Your bones throb. You don't remember the last time someone looked at you like you mattered. But sometimes, just sometimes, after a long shift, one of the dogs leans into your leg. Not for food, just for warmth. And in that small moment, you feel seen. Not by the castle, not by the cook, but by something real. And that's enough. For now. Because here, in a place where the fire never sleeps and the wheel never stops, even a small kindness is worth clinging to. You fall asleep to the sound of paws on timber, and wake to the same, as if the night itself turns on a spit. You are a washerwoman, or more accurately, you are one of many. Part of an endless, soggy line of hunched figures by the riverbank. Sleeves rolled, fingers red, backs bent, voices hoarse from shouting over rushing water and clacking paddles. You clean things, clothes, sheets, tunics, cloaks, rags, bandages, occasionally armor, though that's rare and a nightmare. You do not clean the people themselves. They consider that a separate domain, one even lower. You wake while the sky is still more bruised than light. You splash cold water on your face and hope it's enough to shake the fog from your mind. You're not hungover, you couldn't afford the ale, but the weariness clings like mildew. You wrap your hands in strips of cloth before starting. Not to stay dry, there's no chance of that, but to prevent the skin from cracking open. It never quite works. Your fingers are always raw, always trembling. Your feet are perpetually soaked. It doesn't matter what season. The river doesn't care. Spring floods, summer stench, autumn winds, winter ice. You work through them all. Your toes are more myth than flesh now. Just cold, aching stubs at the end of your legs. You scrub with soap when you have it. Lie when you don't. Lie burns. You've got scars on your forearms from when it splashed and ate through the top layer of skin like it had somewhere to be. No one warns you. You learn fast, or you don't, and someone else replaces you. Today it's bed sheets, big ones, lord's chambers, likely soiled in every imaginable way. You don't ask. You don't want to know. You dunk them into the water, slap them against rocks, scrub the fabric with stiff brushes until your arms go numb. Your team of women works in rhythm, a chain of motion and muscle memory. Scrub, rinse, wring, hang, repeat. The air smells of wet wool and sweat and something metallic you stop trying to name. Sometimes you talk, gossip mostly. Who's been dismissed? Who's pregnant? Who fainted on the stairs and cracked a tooth? It's not cheer, just something to push back against the sound of rushing water and silence. Your neck always aches. Your lower back is a constant scream, but you don't stop. If you pause, the pile grows. It always grows. Noble laundry is eternal. Once a week you tackle armor, chainmail caked with sweat and rust, padded gambesons soaked through with blood. You soak them in a mixture that smells like vinegar and rot, then scrub until your knuckles swell. One time, a squire brought you a tunic still sticky with gore. You asked if he wanted it washed or burned. He didn't laugh. Neither did you. When it rains, everything slows. Not because of the water, it's not like you're trying to stay dry, but because nothing dries. You hang soaked linens on sagging lines and pray the wind holds. When it snows, it's worse. The river ices over in layers. You chip a hole, draw water by the bucket, and scrub until your fingers go blue. You cry sometimes, but not loudly. The older women say tears just freeze faster. Your skin is always dry, cracked. Your nails split. Your hair breaks. You smell of dampness and lie, like a bar of soap that's given up on trying to be helpful. You eat bread and beans. When you're lucky, cheese. When you're very lucky, meat. But only after a noble wedding or a funeral, when leftovers trickle downward like a rare kindness. You're allowed to take soap slivers home. That's the only perk. You melt them into new bars in a pot over the hearth. They never quite hold together. You use them anyway. You hear everything. The noble women complain that their lace is too crisp, that their underthings scratch in the wrong places, that the dye has faded, that someone else's perfume still clings. You nod. You don't speak. You listen. You make a note. You pretend to care. Once, a lady's maid blamed you for a missing embroidery thread. You got flogged. It wasn't you. It didn't matter. You still had to finish the washing that day. There are younger girls, newer hands. They still smile. They think this is temporary, that they'll marry out of it, that some night we'll notice their eyes while delivering laundry to the armory. You don't tell them otherwise. Hope is a soft blanket. It helps for a while. Your daughter helps on slow days. She's 10, already stronger than you were at 15. Her arms are thin, but her grip is iron. She scrubs with fury. You both know what's coming. You both ignore it. She asked once if the nobles ever clean their own clothes. You laughed, bitterly, then told her no. but sometimes they ruin them fast enough to keep you busy. There's a kind of hierarchy even among washerwomen. The older ones get the best seats, flat stones, close to the fire. You get one of the middle perches. You'll move up if you last. If your back doesn't snap like a frostbitten branch. At night, you stretch your arms and flex your fingers, counting the splits. You soak your hands in oil when you can. If not, in lukewarm broth. The warmth is brief, but blessed. Your sleep is dreamless. When you close your eyes, you still see fabric. Still feel the rhythm. Scrub, rinse, wring, hang. It echoes in your bones. You've heard noble girls weep over silk stains. You've watched them toss gowns into fire because of bad energy. You picked the fabric out of the ashes to salvage the buttons. Your hands are tough, scarred, not pretty, but strong. You once caught a falling child with one arm while still wringing a cloak with the other. No one saw. That's fine. You work near the castle's edge. Near the dumping ground. You know the smell of every corner. Laundry takes in scent like gossip. Once it touches, it stays. Your greatest fear isn't illness or cold. It's being replaced. Not because they dislike you, but because your body can't keep up. You've seen it. One day someone doesn't show. No one asks why. You whisper stories to the fabric. Little spells. May the wearer never trip. May they never bleed. May they someday say thank you, even if it's not to you. You don't believe in magic, but you believe in repetition. And there's power in that. One girl hums while she works. A soft tune. You don't know the words. No one does. But it helps. You catch yourself humming it sometimes, even when your hands are deep in filth. You fix things without being asked. Torn hems, missing ties, loose buttons. You're not paid for it. You don't expect to be. You just want the things you touch to last a little longer, because nothing else does. You weren't supposed to see it. You were carrying a tray, cheese, bread, dried fruit, and trying not to trip over your own feet as you entered the solar. You were told the Lord wasn't there. You were told the room was empty. You were wrong. The tray tilts. The grapes roll off like tiny green soldiers. The cheese lands with a slap. The bread bounces once. He looks at you. He is not angry. He is afraid. You realize why. He is crying. Not the noble kind of tears. Those perfect, glistening droplets that sit artfully on the cheek until dabbed away by lace. No, these are full, shaking sobs. Red eyes. Wet mouth. Shoulders curled forward like a child afraid of thunder. His tunic is rumpled. His hands are shaking. You stand frozen, unsure whether to apologize or run. You've seen plenty of things in your life. Bruises, burns, rage, but never this. He opens his mouth. You expect a command, curse, a dismissal. Instead, he says, "Do you ever dream of being elsewhere?" You don't answer. Not because you don't have an answer, but because no one has ever asked. You nod. That seems enough for him. He nods back, eyes shining, and waves you out of the room. You leave the tray, even though the grapes have rolled under the sideboard. You don't tell anyone. That night you dream of a lake. Still, silver, endless. You do not see the castle. You do not smell grease or hear dogs or feel the sting of soap on broken skin. You just float. The next morning, you wake to find your boots gone. Someone's taken them. Again, you go barefoot. You feed the dogs. You count candles. You scrub stains. You split firewood until your palms split too. No one thanks you, but that moment, the moment where a man meant to be above everyone else shattered in front of you, stays. It does not fix anything, but it reminds you that even those at the top can break. Even they wish to float sometimes.